Hey guys, Outlier here, and I'm talking to you from behind a PNG tuber because it's impossible to light my room well. Today I'll be showing you how I made this drum and bass song in the style of MUZZ, and how you can make one just like it. Right, so let's start with an intro. Started with this preset that I called Scaring the MUZZ. Essentially what it is I built this pattern in an LFO, took a saw wave, detuned it, routed it to this filter here, added a ton of extra effects that are kind of just there to beef the sound up. Sounds like this. And if you notice it's getting more intense over time, that's because I'm automating the filter on the distortion in Vital. And then I watched MUZZ, back when he went as Muzzy rather than MUZZ, break down his track Spectrum. What he does is he likes to have a lot of weird atonal elements, but he also likes to have a bunch of orchestral elements that sound really natural. So what I did for creating the ambience for the intro was I layered this pad, these strings, which, if I could afford contact libraries, would sound a lot better, this thing, and this atmosphere. I layered this bell plugin as well. This is a Vital preset. You can get it from Black Lotus Audio. Oh, I forgot. You could get it from Black Lotus Audio, at least before the entire company went under. Instead, you can get it from ADSR Samples, because that's where their packs are now. So you put all that together and it sounds like this. Wait, no, that's not it. Then, for the bass in the intro, I added this brass horn, this acid sound. Oh yeah, this brass horn is a flex preset, but I added a few effects to it, added an EQ, an OTT, kilohertz distortion without the effects, with the effects. Basically, I'm just bringing up the high frequencies, cutting a bit of lows and mids, and distorting it, nothing too fancy. And I added this acid sound. It's this weird wavetable, typical filter envelope stuff. Gave it a crap ton of reverb and delay. And then I made another acid sound. This one's a pretty more normal analog sounding acid sound. I've got this analog wavetable from Echo Soundworks. Put it through a diode filter. If you want an acid sounding bass, diode filter. Anything else just doesn't work. Like if I switch it to this, just nowhere near as good. Compression, distortion, cutting a little bit of the mud from here, and then reverb and delay to make it more atmospheric. And then added in some very faint crowd noise here in the intro. That's not crowd noise, that is water noise. Alright, whatever. And then if you put all that together, it sounds like this. Oh, it still doesn't actually sound like this. I forgot about the hats. This is basically just a normal hat sample, and I put an EQ on it and some convolution reverb. Then I layered it with this percussion loop for the second half of the intro, which sounds like... And I'm distorting the heck out of it, and then EQing it down to just this. So yeah. And now, if you play everything all together, it sounds like... This big bass hit is the acid bass and the horn from the intro, plus this sound, which comes from a Culture sample pack. If you haven't heard of Culture samples, they have incredible drum and bass samples. Go check them out. This isn't sponsored. I just really like them. Then I got this preset, which is being distorted and then put through some reverb in addition to just a little bit of EQ. This one's a preset from Artifact. He makes really good NEUROFUNK presets. He's also a really small creator. Check out his channel. And then this bass hit, which it's from a Cymatics pack, and I think it might be used in Kendrick Lamar's Humble remix. I don't know. Continuing orchestral strings. Reusing that sound. Ton of impacts and the like. And then we got the main lead, which is being filtered in with these automation clips down here. And we're also giving it a little reverb throw. Yeah, it's from Culture. I got this preset pack for free for reviewing one of their packs. I don't know if that deal still exists. And then what I'm doing with that is, during the drop, I've got two variations of it. One, and then the second one where I'm automating the FM up so it gradually sounds like... And then that's being layered with this sound right here, which is a very similar sound. Actually, it's the exact same sound, but an octave down. And if you put them together, they sound like... This is where the drums come in, starting with a crash. It's got this clap pattern going. As you might have noticed, I'm automating in some reverb. And as you might not have noticed, I'm also high-passing the build-up as we get closer and closer to it. So the bass hits start out sounding like this, but then they go to sounding like this. Yeah, a lot of that sub is gone there. And then I've got the kick and snare being played on top of each other. This isn't actually the main drop snare. This is a specific snare for the build. And then I've got this little build-up enhancer layer. This is from an oversampled pack. And then if you layer all of those, the build-up drums... Oh yeah, in addition to these crashes and the top loop from the drop. Build-up drums sound like this. Got pretty much the same effect action we had going into the build, except there's also this riser. This one's from a sample pack by Styx Audio called Chroma. I don't actually recommend their sample packs for drum and bass producers. They're more focused on like classic EDM house, like progressive house type stuff. No copyright sounds ass music. Oh yeah, and we've got a laser hitting right before the drop. If you put all of that together, the build-up sounds like this. Right, so you've already heard the kick, but you haven't heard the snare, which is this. It's a very dubsteppy snare, which is something MUZZ likes to do. He uses more dubstep sounding than drum and bass sounding drums in his tracks. And then into every other snare, I'm adding this little reverse. What this is I took the tail of this snare and reversed it, faded it in and lowered the volume a bunch so it sounds like... It's subtle, but it just adds a little bit of energy to the drop. To borrow a line from every goated producer ever, it's kind of more felt than heard. It sounds pretty obvious here, but you actually really don't notice it when everything else is playing. I literally just used a top loop for the drums, and it sounds fine. Layered it with a crash, layered it with these lasers. Full drums sound like this. Alright. Time for the drop neuro stabs. Now, what I have going here is a call and response type of thing, where I've got some bass hits, and then I've got the lead sounds, and if you play them together, they sound like this. So what we got here is the brass from the build-up. We got this neuro layer, which is actually the same as the layer that I labeled the throngler, except the throngler has reverb on it. This is because it's used for the more ambient sections, whereas this is the drop. You don't want reverb on your main bass. And then I layered it with this sound. This one is not intended to be a drum and bass bass. It's from this pack of really weird presets from a guy called Sonic Spore. He's got some goated free stuff. Essentially what you've got is this weird wavetable with a bunch of cool harmonics. Then you're running it through some filters. You're running it through some phasers to give it that vowel-y sound. And then another phaser, compression, signfold, distortion. It's surprisingly simple. There's also some randomization with the filters going on here, so each hit is ever so slightly different. So yeah, if you layer those together, you've got this one for texture, you've got this one for the main punch of the bass. And then under everything, we've got this sub-bass pluck, which this is the most I've ever processed a sound. Look at this. You might think, is all of that necessary? The answer is yes. I think. Yeah, so what this is I've got your typical drum and bass saw bass line. You've got another saw an octave up, and then you've got a sub bass. And then you've got this filter pluck action going on in here. Then added some chorus, compression, distortion, and equalization to it, which is a pretty simple bass, but as you can see, it's not actually that simple. It sounds way more subby, distorted, and gritty with the processing. So what all of that is add EQ to take out some of the highs, especially this 4000 Hertz range, which hurts your ears. Add a mid-side EQ, take away the low end from the sides, add a little bit of high end to the sides, add a little bit of sub to the mid, remove a little bit of bass from here in the mid, remove a little bit of here in the mid, then add distortion, then add OTT, then make it stereo wider, but enable safe bass on it so that the sub isn't stereo, because who the hell wants stereo sub? Then add even more EQ, taking out some of the mids. Then add a fruity balance, I'll explain why later. Then take out some more of the mud here with this really dumb looking EQ curve. This one in particular is really important for giving other elements space in the mix, because this is supposed to be mostly sub, and then you've got this stuff up here to add a little bit of interest while the main basses aren't playing in the mids and highs. Then we have a kilohertz compactor on here. Now, it's time to introduce you to how I sidechain, because this is not how I was doing sidechain not too long ago, and it's also not how most producers sidechain. So what I've got here, I've got the kick and the snare, and they're routed into a bus called the kick snare. Now this is routed into 3 channels. It's routed to the drum bus, obviously, and then it's routed with the volume at 0 into the cymbals and into the sidechain channel. Now what's happening here is, say I've got something playing, and it's routed into the sidechain channel. What you'll see is, you'll see the drums are being ducked out of the bass. Now, what this does, and this is used all over EDM, is make room for the kick and snare in the mix, since they're your most prevalent elements. You need to have them in there. But it's not just useful for that. If I go back to this, and I enable the neuro stabs, what you'll see is, rather than these getting really muddy and clashing with each other, every time the neuro stabs play, the bass, the sub bass, is being ducked out, because they've got their own subs. They don't need extra sub. But what's especially nice about Kilohertz Compactor is what it's subtracting isn't just volume. What it's subtracting is actually the harmonics. It works by subtracting the waveforms. That's what ring mod sidechain is. So therefore, what it's doing is only subtracting the parts that exist within the neuro stabs and leaving the rest of the sub pluck alone. Meaning that 2 bass sounds that would clash a lot otherwise. See, there's way too much lows and mids building up there. Instead, they fit into the mix much more nicely. Oh yeah, and that fruity balance is doing a similar thing manually here, except there's one small problem. This has a lot of reverb tail, which was making this stay quiet for too long. So instead, I automated this fruity balance to just cut out while the bass hits were playing. And you'd think that would sound off-putting and unnatural to have it come in so suddenly, but it actually kind of works. Then next we've got this Reese fill in here, which is also... But yeah, same thing happening here. What we've got is... We've got a preset from Black Lotus Audio again, the Nebuchadnezzar. We got a sub bass, we got a saw wave, we got some detune on it. We got a key track filter. We got this LFO with the frequency at 0.5 seconds rather than any specific note. We got voices on 1. We got always glide and legato. We got some chorus. We got some compression. We got something happening with the EQ. We got distortion. We got some flanger to give it a metallic texture. We got some phaser to give it a throaty texture. We got this filter, which isn't doing much, I think. Oh, no, yeah. The filter is actually being automated here by one of these clips, so it goes like... Which is a lot more interesting than just... Anyways, then we got distortion, we got some EQ, boosting the sub, taking out the mids. Maybe I didn't need to boost the sub that much, but it's fine. We got OTT, can't live without it. And we got this really great free plugin called T-Saturator. So this thing's got a couple of awesome features. Number one, it's got an auto gain feature, meaning if you press this button, the volume that you're getting out of it will be the same as the volume you're getting into it, regardless of all the loudness that's being added by the saturation. I've got it only saturating the highs, and then I've got it making it all crunchy and stuff. Yeah, it's very subtle, but it definitely helps make it stand out in the mix more. And then, second half of the first drop is pretty much the same as the first. We got the intro stuff again. There's some pretty simple effects here. And then there's more complicated stuff. This is another one from the MUZZ sample pack. We got some crowd noise. We got whatever this is. I have no idea. We got this. This is like a trap sample pack sound. I don't actually know where I got it. It's labeled as the Jerk Vox. We also got this thing, which was supposed to be like a womp bass, and that wound up turning into just like a little background detail. So yeah, the drop sounds like this. Second half of the drop, we've got the big stabs from the build-up back. We got the CPU issues from the build-up back as well. Basically, we brought in pretty much the entire build-up, gave it more of a slightly relaxed vibe. As a transition sound effect, we also added this. The iconic, the one and only, wheel up sound effect. Anyway, nothing too special going on here. The second half of the song is kind of just the first half of the song looped, but we added just a little extra stuff here. No, I'm wrong. We did not add a little extra stuff aside from like this siren sound. And miraculously, that is enough to keep it from getting boring. Or maybe I just have higher attention span. I'd ask you guys to tell me in the comments if you guys feel like I have more attention span than you, but let's be real, if you've made it into this video, you already have higher than average attention span. Second build up, same as the first. But we got this extra long section to build up even more tension, because instead, we had an 8-bar build up, right, in the first one. In the second drop, we're doing 16 bars of build-up. So, and how we're accomplishing that is, number one, we got a different... I'm not going to be able to play the entirety of this at once, am I? Whatever. The point is, we've got a separate riser in addition to slightly altered drums, and that sounds like this. I never saved that as a preset. If you design a cool sound, always save it as a preset. You're never going to know when you're going to need it in the future. Anyways, so this is just a saw wave. Got this 16-bar uplifter, which I routed to a bunch of stuff. But then I've got this, which is routed to the voice transpose on the oscillator to give it that whew, whew, whew kind of feel to it. And then we got this that's actually routed to the speed of this LFO. So, for one beat every 2 bars, so once every 8 beats, it plays at double speed to play 2 instead of 1. And then what this is routed to is we got it routed to... we have it cutting out the lows of the sound, we got it adding reverb, we got it adding delay, we got it pitching up oscillator 1 even more, we got it raising up the detune on oscillator 1, we got it adding more chorus, and we have it actually reducing the distortion on this distortion. Yeah, you can see it's actually getting less downsampled instead of more. Yeah. So, please CPU, I need this. My channel is kind of viewless. I have no idea why it hates the build-up in particular. Anyways, drop 2. We have a different neuro bass layered with the same neuro bass, so it's got that sense of continuity, but also it doesn't make people bored. This one is also from a Sonic Spore preset. But again, it's not being used the way it's supposed to be. Like, this was very much intended to be just a weird experimental sound and not something for drum and bass. By the way, I haven't been showing off a lot of the processing chains on these. That is because the processing chain pretty much universally is OTT, distortion, some kind of EQ that's cutting out 3 to 4K, and some of the mids. Like, that is pretty much it. So yeah, it's got a really cool texture to it. The leads are exactly the same. Everything is exactly the same, except instead of the Reese fill, what we've got here is this is a foghorn type bass. It's also from that Culture Free Presets pack. And what's going on here is this macro is routed to the speed of the flutter effect on it. So it's being automated up to go like... And then that part is actually identical, and then we don't actually have an outro, we just have... We just have a long-ass dramatic impact with the strings, and then I'm automating a plugin called Codec on the mix bus up to make it sound all weird and shit. Actually, wait, where is Codec? I don't see Codec on here. Oh wait, Codec is on the real master. Okay. Yeah. So what I do is, I have reference tracks. I don't want my reference tracks running through my mastering chain, because they are already mastered. So instead, what I do is, I put my master chain on this mix bus channel, so that only what I'm working on in this project gets routed through it. As I mentioned, I'm making the build-up mono, removing some of the low end and adding reverb to the build-ups so that the drop hits harder. Essentially, I'm making the build-up less hard so that the drop is more hard. It might sound counterintuitive, but it's actually used like pretty much everywhere in EDM. And then I'm sad to admit it, guys. I committed a cardinal sin of OTT with this mastering chain. I put OTT on the master. But this actually works really well if you use it as an inflator. So what you do is you put the downward compression at 0%, and then the depth at 6%, or some other really small number. Generally, if it's above 20%, it's way too high. For the rest of the mastering chain, I'm giving it just a tiny bit of stereo width, again, enabling that safe bass control to make sure everything under 150 Hz stays mono. I'm then running it through the only paid plugin I own, the Oxford Inflator. Essentially, it's like Sound Goodizer if Sound Goodizer actually made your sound good instead of over-compressed and dog shit. And then giving it just a little bit of EQ shifts, adding some crisp highs to it, boosting the sub a little bit, cutting a little bit of the mud and harshness at 3K here. And then finally running it through a hard clipper, just to make sure it's not going above 0 decibels. Yeah, so that's pretty much the entire track. Let me know if you want this released on Spotify or wherever. I will be trying to get it out on there if there's any demand for it, or on YouTube, or on Bandcamp. Please buy it on Bandcamp. Please buy it with your money. I need it. Nah, I'm kidding. Again, if there's any demand for it whatsoever, I will also put the Again, if there's any demand for it whatsoever, I will also put the FLP on Patreon. Check out my Patreon. I've got a new sample pack in the works. It's color bass. Very weird experimental color bass. Hey, this is recording my PNG tuber, right? Yeah, it's recording my PNG tuber. But yeah, that is about all. If you enjoyed the video, like. If you enjoyed the video even more, subscribe. If you hated my video, comment on it. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. And Outlier out. See y'all.